Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I am your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart from CLP Audio and Staging. I am the Grumpy Sound Guy, or at least that is my online persona. Today we're going to talk about PreSonus. I have avoided this subject for a very long time. My mother said if I don't have good things to say about somebody, you shouldn't say anything at all. But I have been constantly badgered by PreSonus people to talk about PreSonus and to talk about why I have the opinion that I have about PreSonus. So yeah, man, it's going to be a rocky roller coaster of a ride today. So stick around. You do not want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, if I could just have a moment of your time to talk to you about this channel. 49.8% of you guys watching this right now is not subscribed to this channel. Will you please hit that subscription button? It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel on the public side here. And then that gives us tools and resources and for my marketing team to be able to do what we need to do to get this content out to people who really enjoy this sort of thing. The other thing is, if you're super digging this and you'd like a deeper look into my world, then subscribe to the paid side of the YouTube channel. You can join for about the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you know, and then I do vlogs over there. I post content that never goes public, and I let you into my world. I let you into the CLP audio world, and I let you see what our day-to-day life looks like. Love you guys. Thank you for the support. Hello and welcome back. So, PreSonus. Man, dear God, where do I even start? There's so much to say about this. Let's just start at the beginning. So, many moons ago, long enough ago to where a lot of you guys don't even know this information. A lot of you guys will know this information, but I run into a lot of PreSonus guys that are, you know, in their early 20s or whatever, and they're not really old enough, or maybe even mid to late 20s. They're not really old enough to remember when PreSonus was originally released and the fanfare that came with that. Because let me tell you, we were excited. We were excited to be able to, everything was analog in those days. You were carrying a big desk with you, a front of house rack with all your compressors, EQs, and gates and stuff like that in it, you know, effects units, all that kind of jazz. All that had to be patched every single show. It was just the way we did business. No one really thought anything about it one way or the other. It's just what is necessary to do what we do. Yeah. And then PreSonus comes along and tells us that no, now we are entering the world of digital, and now you can have all those buzzers and whistles right at your fingertips in something they call a fat channel, which is basically the dynamic section of the StudioLive. Now, before this, let me preempt this and say that, you know, I was a pretty good fan of PreSonus. I had a bunch of their mic pre's in some of my racks. To this day, I still say that the Studio One recording software is great software. I know a bunch of guys, especially a bunch of metal guys, that are still using Studio One to this day, and I mean pumping out really good sounding stuff, you know. And then let me also state that, you know, I know there's a kind of a cult following around each major brand of mixer. There's the X32, M32 crowd. You know, I'm in that M32 crowd to some degree or another. You know, there's the Allen and Heath guys. Everybody's got their famous brand. It's like Ford and Chevy, you know. Everybody's got their favorite brand, and they're adamantly convinced their brand is the greatest, best, most practical thing in the world. PreSonus is no different. I took an enormous amount of heat from the Behringer wing guys when I was critical of that. So believe me, I have been on the receiving end of some serious criticism and my views of gear, okay? But my views of gear come from life experience and from being networked with guys that own and operate this equipment, all the time. And I'm really just, in some cases, repeating their feedback that they've given me, that sort of thing. With PreSonus, and I said all that to say, I don't really have any favors. I tend to lean toward Midas. I love their Pro Series consoles, but I also like the Avid consoles. I like, the higher end Yamaha stuff. All those Pro Touring desks are happening. So a big fan of Allen and Heath. Before I went digital, all the analog stuff that I had was Allen and Heath. I've had 4 or 5 different analog Allen and Heath consoles in my command. Probably more than that, honestly. Yeah, probably maybe 8 or 10, because Allen and Heath and Soundcraft kind of ruled the roost in the middle market, back in the day, in the analog days. So I'm not like, I'm in M32 because it's a lot of bang for your buck for the money, gets the job done. I like the workflow, blah, blah, blah. If you're into whatever mixer you're into, don't crucify me because I have a different opinion. You do you, boo. You do whatever you want to do, okay? I'm not here to tell you, I'm not here to tell you how to run your life and run your production business. I'm here to give my followers the feedback they're asking for. So, when PreSonus hit the market with the original StudioLive, dude, we were all stoked. Like, super happy. It was a too good to be true kind of scenario, honestly. A whole bunch of us was like, there's just no way. There's no way. Now, going to digital, and you young guys don't really understand this, but going to digital was a massive, sideways shift in how you mix. In the days of analog, even a just middle of the road, middle market, like a GL 2400 Allen and Heath analog console was fairly warm for what it was. Way warmer than all the middle market digital consoles we know today. It just, by the nature of the technology of analog, it tends to be warm and fat. If a guy really understood how to run all his outboard gear correctly and had a good ear for frequency, man, you could just be a rock star, on analog gear. Analog gear was somewhat idiot-proof in a lot of ways. Unless you just made really catastrophic, huge mistakes, man, you could really make a gig sound, at the very least, acceptable and decent without anybody complaining. Well, then when we moved into the digital world and the StudioLive kind of blazing that trail, it was a completely different approach to mixing. Now the console was much more transparent and it was sterile. It didn't really give you, that warmth that you were used to getting from the console. And it took a lot of criticism because of that from analog guys, myself included. When I originally heard a StudioLive, I was like, oh man, that's really harsh sounding. It just doesn't have a body. But what we came to learn was, well, you just got to have a really good ear for frequency, and you need to EQ and compress your system in a manner to where you create that warmth and body, You follow me? So once we kind of got over that hump, it was much more digestible, and we were all super excited about, PreSonus. No one was really on the market at that stage of the game, at least in the middle market, doing anything digital. Now, a lot of Pro Touring guys had already been in the world of digital for some time at that point, but those were consoles that were way financially out of reach for the average middle market guy, So, bringing something affordable that was digital and had all the buzzers and whistles of digital to the market was a huge thing. And like I said, we were excited and we grasped onto that technology and worked with it. I have personally, because I get a lot of flack from guys, like if I do gear reviews and the piece of gear isn't sitting right here in front of me, You know, I don't have any right to talk about it. Well, I mean, I can talk about how cool Ferrari is too, because I know people who's owned them, and they've told me how cool they are. I've sat in the circles and listened to them talk about how cool their cars are. I don't necessarily have to have the piece of equipment right in front of me. I can read the specs online. I can make some phone calls and call guys that are using the gear, and we can get a really good feel for what we're dealing with there. With this subject, with PreSonus, that is not the case. I have worked on countless PreSonus consoles of every generation except the most recent. I will be honest and say that. But I have one very close friend of mine, and two other guys that I know that are using 32Rs right now for their ears. One guy's using it for ears and front of house. The other two are just using them for their ears. I think the 32R really is getting it done in a manner of input and output better than even Midas and some of the Allen Heath and some of these other rack mixers that we got. And I digress, because you can go back to my other videos about the SQ rack and the Behringer wing rack and hear me complaining about that. The PreSonus 32R got it right as far as that's concerned, you know. And the guys that I know that are using this, you know, third generation or this Series 3 or whatever it is, they're pretty much happy. You know, they're not really complaining. I mean, the thing works. It's getting it done. You know, maybe, just maybe, they have figured their stuff out. I have extensive experience on the original StudioLive and the AI. You know, and I really honestly, guys, I really honestly wish that this wasn't my critique of that gear, but they're horrible. They're absolutely horrible. And they were horrible for a very, very long time. And PreSonus did little to nothing to try and fix known problems with those consoles. And what it did was it took a whole bunch of us that was super excited about the product, super excited about the brand, you know, was fully behind it, and you just beat us into submission to a place to where we didn't even want to look at another piece of PreSonus equipment, no matter what it was, ever again. Let me tell you some stories. In the first generation, because they were the worst, I have been called in countless times to churches who were using these mixers, trying to get them to just behave. And by that, I mean do what it was designed to do. Countless times I had went in, set a mix, saved a mix, and it just all disappeared. Or during the service, or we were usually in rehearsal mode when we were working on the console. During the rehearsal, the console just kind of had a ghost in it and would do its own thing. It would turn things up, it would turn things down, it would, you know, engage effects and unengage effects. Compressors were all wonky. I never, to this day, even on the latest version of it, because I was actually had it in my hand, so I guess I'm lying, I have mixed on it, I forgot about this. I had it in my hand on an iPad like 3 weeks ago with a really close friend of mine that uses one, and I still don't think that the EQs and the compressors are worth a nickel. You know, some of it's there just for looks. It really reminded me of Peavey in a lot of ways. And the original StudioLive was horrible for that. I mean, it worked mostly, but it wasn't anything to write home to mom about. It was nowhere near as sensitive and as accurate as what any of the analog consoles were that had, you know, 4-band EQs with dual sweeps. You know, here on these, you can move your frequencies around all 4 bands. And on the StudioLive, the original, and I got a pretty good ear for frequency. I've been doing this a very long time, 37 years, you know, in this. And there were times where I was looking at like 2.5 on the mixer, and I was not hearing 2.5. I was hearing like 4K, or I was hearing 1K. You know, I wasn't hearing what the numbers quit, and that's what reminded me of Peavey. Peavey was kind of like that sometimes. especially on their middle market where they had one sweep on their analog consoles. I remember, telling guys that the numbers are just on there for looks. You got to use your ear. And I would boost the gain on that sweep, and I would move the sweep till I got to the frequency I was looking for, and then turn the gain back down and do the cut or whatever it is I needed to do, for what I was trying to accomplish. But every time I looked at that sweep, the numbers never matched up to what I was hearing. Same thing with these StudioLives. Same thing, It was okay at best. So, a lot of us were kind of like, okay, it's new technology. We understand there's going to be a learning curve there. We understand that it's going to take some time to kind of get it right. But that first generation of mixers, even with some of the updates that came out and stuff, man, it was just an epic failure, one after another. I've seen a bunch of them shut down in the middle of shows. I did a sound check one time at a club, just finished the sound check, everything's okay. I'm standing there, I'm just kind of got my hand rested on the console and talking to the house guy. I was working for the band that night, I was a band engineer that night. And the console just completely shut off, rebooted, and we lost the whole sound check. And we had saved that scene. We had saved that sound check, as soon as we got done with sound check. And we had like 10 minutes before we go on. In 10 minutes, I had to go back through and just kind of eyeball back into the ballpark of where we were and then dial it back in. Yeah, we were running ears and front of house off that mixer, And then when we got to the AI was definitely a step in the right direction. The AI was much better, much more stable, that sort of thing. I still don't think the EQs and the compressors got any better. I think they just kind of pushed whatever they had in the first gen right into the second gen. But the AI console was better. And one thing I'll give PreSonus in all these different generations of their technology is they're very user-friendly, for the most part. They're very user-friendly, especially the app. The app, that control surface thing is very user-friendly. And that's really what keeps a lot of guys on this stuff, is the fact that they like the workflow. My very good friend who has a 32R, he also has an X32. And he struggles with the X32 because he's used to the 32R and just really, really likes the workflow of the 32R. And man, I can't take anything away from that, They are pretty user-friendly. So the AI, I was on an AI I do a church gig on Sundays down in Gaithersburg, Maryland, which is about an hour and 10 minutes from where I live out here in West Virginia. They have two 32-channel AIs, one in the sanctuary and then one down in the children's department or whatever. I struggled with that thing. I probably ran sound on that thing for at least 3 or 4 years, before I finally was able to talk them into moving over to an M32 configuration. And boy, the difference it's made. I mean, it just really, really has. But I got a little bit of pushback about, about changing the ecosystem, because guys had to, some of the other people who were there had to learn how to use Mixing Station. They had to learn a different workflow. Just kind of is what it is. Now that's been about a year ago we made that change, and everybody's kind of on board, and I don't think anyone's struggling, because Mixing Station makes everything really user friendly. And you can run the PreSonus stuff with Mixing Station, so it's really up to you. Most PreSonus guys that I know are using the PreSonus Control Surface app, and they're happy with that. And I can see why, because it's very user friendly. So yeah, the AI. So, man, the biggest gripe I had about it was it didn't sound good. The EQs and compressors were junk, and it would never, for the life of me, save the scribble strips. So you would name all your channels on the scribble strips, save it, and come in the next week or do a power cycle, and they're gone. Or it would remember a scribble strip layout from when they first got the console, and then as the church was growing and as the inputs on stage was growing, obviously that input scribble strip layout is going to change. probably the last 6 months I ran that console, I was still looking at the scribble strip setup from our previous configuration. It would, no matter how many times I corrected it and saved it, no matter how many times I tried to do, wave magic wands over it and get it to do what I wanted it to do, it would never keep the scribble strips. And dude, it was just a pain in the rear end, man. Did it pass audio? Sure, it did. Did it mostly do what we wanted it to do? Yes, it did. But for what you pay for these things, I don't think that's good enough. I am always trying to have your back. I am always trying to have you in mind when I have these conversations, because your money's hard to come by the same way my money's hard to come by. It just is what it is. And if you're going to blow $2 or $3, $4 grand, whatever it is, on a console, then the thing should have at least a 10-year life cycle, and it should do what it's supposed to do, what it claims to do. The AI really never. The only thing that it improved was it didn't crash like the originals did. It didn't kind of have that ghost in the machine thing where it would move around on its own, although I guess I'm lying, because I did catch that one at the church, kind of doing that a couple different times, where it was turning things up and down, and it just like gremlins in it or something, dude. I don't know, man. I don't know. So, I mean, that has been such a disappointment to those of us who were so behind the PreSonus brand and were so into what it was trying to accomplish. We believed in it. Some of us really stood on a soapbox and defended it for a long time, really long after we should have defended it. So when I make these claims on something like this, and I hate being negative, but it's just the truth, man. Like when I make these claims, I'm not making it just because, I don't like Ford because I'm a Chevy guy. No, it's because I have experience on this and have dealt with the firsthand nightmares that this gear has caused me over the years. I will never own another piece of PreSonus equipment for as long as I live. If someone gave me 32R tomorrow, a brand new one, I would put it up on Facebook Marketplace and sell it. My clients deserve everything that I bring to the table in terms of experience, knowledge, and wisdom about this business. I know that PreSonus is problematic. It's not a brand that I feel like I could ever trust again. And that's coming from epic failures over decades of, time here. Otherwise, I'd be sitting here telling you how great PreSonus is, because when stuff works, that's my review of it. That's why I'm an M32 guy. It's a freaking workhorse, dude. My A-Rig M32 is, man, I'm probably pushing, 1,200 shows on that thing. And, knock on wood, it's been great. I haven't had one failure. I haven't had one lockup. I haven't had anything do that it wasn't supposed to do. That's what we should all expect from these mixers when we buy them. If you've got to stand there and make excuses for your mixer, you probably bought the wrong mixer. And I know that hits some of you guys in your ego and in your feelings, but dude, let's talk about the elephant in the room here, Here's a brand that came to the market and promised us diamonds and gave us coal. Over and over and over again. And those of us that are old enough to have been working in this market and dealt with the tsunami of epic failures that's been the PreSonus StudioLive, ecosystem, then you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Maybe, and this is my general impression, maybe this, latest generation of PreSonus, they finally got it right. And they finally fixed a bunch of stuff, and now it's finally a dependable mixer. I know I'm not going to waste my money to see if that is true or not, because they've already gotten my money in the past. They won't get it again. Because whose fault is it if I continue to dive back into that pool that we were drowning into? It's my fault at that point. My clients deserve better than that. If I go to a gig, and I'm on a PreSonus console, and the thing takes a dump, and the client asks me why it took a dump, and I'm just kind of like, well, I know that these mixers are, you know, this brand has a reputation for failure and stuff like that, but, you know, I really like the workflow, and I like the way it is, and that's why I brought it to your gig. The client don't give a rip about any of that. They're going to look you in the face and be like, if you already knew all that, and you brought this junk gear to my gig, guess what? They're never going to call you again, okay? Any respectable sound guy who's been in this business, is, you know, for at least 20 years or more, is going to tell you that no respectable sound guy is using PreSonus mixers. None of them. There's just way, way too many other options out there. You know, there just really is, you know. I would take any of the other middle market, the Allen & Heath Q series, you know, obviously the X32. I'm trying to think of lower middle market mixers. Soundcraft UI, the Behringer XR series, which has its own, you know, issues and problems. I would take any of those desks over the PreSonus, any of them. What do you want me to do? You know, it's not, don't get mad at me. I'm not the one that created this brand that everybody sold their soul to, and then they let us down. I don't know what it's going to take for them to get back on top. I mean, they have a cult following of people who are just convinced that PreSonus is great, no matter what hoops they have to jump through at the gig. Like, I can remember the guy that I work with at the church when I first started working there, and he's obviously a PreSonus guy, and he has a recording studio and uses Studio One, I'm pretty sure. And he may be Pro Tools nowadays, but anyways, you know, he was telling me all the little quirks and stuff about it, and I was telling him my opinion about it, and I don't think he really cared for my opinion about it because he wants to believe in the product. You know, man, so did I. I wanted to believe in it too, you know. But if we've got to deal with a bunch of stuff, like something as simple as a scribble strip's not doing what you want them to do. That is most basic fundamental technology on a mixer. Like, there's 1,000 other things on the mixer that is more important than that. This should be the easiest fix in the world. This should be a software update, a firmware update, and boom, you know, problem solved. We got none of that. You know what we got? And here's the crust of the biscuit. We got hung out to dry by a company who clearly was not going to make it right. You take that for whatever you want to take it. That's the impression that company has left with me over the last, you know, 15, 20 years, whatever it's been, you know, since the StudioLive hit the market. Because I was excited, couldn't wait to get my hands on one. And it was epic failure after epic failure. So don't get mad at me. I'm not the one that created the issue. I did what everybody else did. I quit buying their products and I moved on. You know, maybe you need to do what Uni Behringer did and go buy out some other companies or something that have a reputation you can lean on and, you know, restructure and rebrand your company. I don't know. Maybe if you slam the price of the new, this newest generation of mixers, that would be enough to get people back into your brand. Because money talks, let's face it. There are people regularly in my comment section that are driven more by how much a mixer costs than by what a mixer can do. That's ass backwards in my world, but hey man, whatever, to each is their own. Maybe that's what it's going to take to get PreSonus back where they once were, but I'm telling you right now, dude, I mean, I've seen riders that said no PreSonus. You know, just like they said no PV back in the day. PreSonus is pretty much the PV of modern digital mixers. You know, and I'm not hating on PV. At least PV had a whole bunch of stuff going their way, and, you know, they fell over themselves on the service end of things to try to make stuff right. There's a lot of positive things to say about PV that I can't say about PreSonus. There's my assessment, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what else to tell you. I wish this was a more positive video, but the proof is in the pudding, guys, and you got to just kind of roll with the punches and take it the way it's dealt out to us. I love you guys. I'll see you next week.